Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for the delay. We're so happy to have you here today. Thank you for being here for the last day of ReelAbilities Film Festival. Yes. Absolutely deserves it. If you've been here for earlier things this week, then I'm sure you're already impacted. And if this is your first event, then I hope it's a little taste for what we're going to have next year also. We are ending an incredible week that included an opening night at the IAC building presented by Vimeo with Robert De Niro and Mayor Eric Adams. We had our ReelAbilities Accessibility Summit take place over the past 2 days, which has been absolutely phenomenal. We had creators, presenters, all different types of creatives that were here talking about accessibility in film and television. It's been absolutely amazing. If you missed it, we are going to post our sessions online. And in the next couple of days, we're also going to have all of our Q&As from the films that we had in the past week online as well on our YouTube channel for ReelAbilities.
Get your questions ready, guys.
But right now, we are so excited to return with this panel. Xian is already sitting right here beside me. So I'm already going to just present you in case anyone doesn't know, though I doubt it. Xian, first of all, is a dear, dear friend of ReelAbilities, of myself, of everyone who meets her, probably, is an advocate, writer, an incredibly bright and I would say multifaceted person who does so much. Fashion icon.
Wow.
Xian has kind of led the initiative for this panel that we've been doing each year. In the past, we focused it more on fashion, beauty, and disability. Each year we try to evolve and think of new ideas of how do we address the most relevant topics and issues that are on the table, which is why we have the conversation ready for us today. So I'm just going to present the title of the panel, and then I'm going to let Xian take it from there, and we'll introduce our panelists. Our title for today is Just Do It. The impact of perfectionism and productivity on mental health and disability. Xian will be moderating the conversation, and I would like to invite to our stage Sugandha Gupta. Sugandha is a textile artist, designer, disability advocate, and educator. Thank you, Sugandha. Miranda Lee, who, beyond being our program associate and doing much of the work that you have seen throughout the week for the festival, is also a disability advocate, writer, creative consultant, and is the consultant and co-curator of the Marvels of Media Awards at the Museum of Moving Image, along with a lot of other things that she has done and still doing. Thank you for being with us. And we have with us today 2 virtual panelists. They are here.
Wow.
Lawrence Carter-Long was here in person until yesterday, but look at this.
He's back
everywhere.
for more.
Hi, Lawrence. Lawrence is also our dear friend of the festival, an activist, advocate, academic, and just an amazing, phenomenal person who knows so much about what we do and what other people do, and we're so honored to have here today. And I'm also very honored to present Jessica Cox. Jessica is the first person without arms to have a pilot certificate, as well as an ATA in martial arts. She is a speaker, an advocate, and we are so honored to have all of you here with us today.
Woo! And Guinness World Record holder as well, I believe.
Yes, thank you.
Just wanted to throw that in there.
Once you win a Guinness World Record, you want that to be known wherever you go. So I'm sorry for that. Xian, I'm going to let you take this from here. Thank you so much.
Gosh, I have butterflies, you guys. First of all, I was saying this is my first in-person gig since March of 2020. So I wish you guys were here, but next year, guys. No, but thank you for being here virtually. And I actually would love to open this up and kind of add to what Yara was saying. You know, this started as a fashion panel, but really it was always about those things in culturally that didn't quite include us in the way that we wanted. So whether that's fashion or beauty standards. So I actually think that, given the pandemic and everything we're going through, this idea of burnout and perfectionism is really connected in a lot of ways to some of the other work that I do is self-esteem related. But I think that it's really even though it doesn't seem like fashion and beauty would be connected to this, I think it is all connected. And for me personally, I believe that the work we're doing is just furthering and moving culture forward for people with disabilities and for an inclusive world in general. But I really wanted to start because this panel was not my idea or Yara's idea. This year, the panel really came from Miranda. So Miss Miranda Lee, would you be so kind as to tell us what was the inspiration for you and why are we here?
Hello. Okay, cool. It's working. Hi, Miranda. Also, just to give a brief visual description for anyone who needs it. I'm a white person. I have long curly brown hair going down past my shoulders. I'm currently wearing a purple shirt and jeans, and I'm adorned with a lot of necklaces and bracelets. One of them is the infinity symbol, which is the symbol that the autism community uses, and I'm autistic, so that's why I like to wear it. And just to give some background about where the idea came from, I have a brother who is studying to become a sports psychologist, and often when he's at the table for dinner, he likes to talk a lot, but there's a lot of interesting things that he likes to talk about, particularly in his field of work. And something that he's very interested in is about mental health and how the toxic culture that surrounds sports has impacted athletes, like Simone Biles. And it made me think about how beyond mental health, which does intersect with disability within the wider disability community, we're surrounded by this expectation to have, everyone in general is surrounded by an expectation to have perfect minds and perfect bodies that impacts marginalized groups in various ways. And for the disability community, it's this idea about having a certain body and a certain mind that you can't meet. But then if you can't meet it, the only way to prove yourself is to prove your productivity. And something that I discovered during research is even with the Paralympics, there used to be campaigns that were about being superhuman that have changed in recent years. But even though I wasn't a sports person, I was still interested in it. And when I originally approached this, I was doing research from a sports angle. But when I spoke to you, Xian, and to Yara about this idea, you both decided to broaden it. And I think that, as you said, just given what's happening right now with current times with the pandemic, and I think that kind of exacerbating a lot of pressures that disabled people face, that it's good to have broadened this subject and brought people across various fields so that we can really have that wider conversation.
Well, thank you, because this wouldn't be happening without that really important seed that you planted for each of us. And that's also what gave me the idea. I mean, Jessica, I've been a huge fan of her. I mean, I think we can finally say we're friends, but really that just consisted of 5 years of me completely stalking her. But when I was thinking about, the people that I know that have done something, well, first of all, I mean, what aren't you doing? But that's part of why I wanted to really talk to you, Jess. What are some of the pressures that you have, especially as a role model? I mean, if anyone doesn't know who Jessica Cox is, I would be surprised, but I think there can be sometimes a lot of pressure when you're a role model. And I think that there's also added pressure for us to kind of mask whatever the things are that we need to do in order to be productive, be a certain image. So I would love to, ask you, Jess, I mean, as somebody who's been at this for a long time, what do you find are some of the pressures or the expectations you have for yourself? I guess that's two questions, but.
That's a great question. Well, great two questions. And I think I'll probably just dive into the first one about pressures about myself and how it is that a lot of times I feel like because my brand is very much around the, achieving a lot of great things. And I have to constantly remind myself that regardless of that pressure, the sense of balance is something that's always important to ensure, because I couldn't be the role model or the advocate or the spokesperson and do the things that I've really been really blessed to do around the world if I didn't have that balance. And I need to have it because, and I have to constantly remind people that that's more important than aspiring to do great things, is making sure that you ensure that that balance is met and that your needs are met, not just physical needs, obviously your emotional needs, and how we can make sure to ensure that for what we're doing for the disability community. And I speak a lot to communities that are not disability focused. And they always ask me, how do you balance, what do you do about self-care? And self-care is a very important subject, obviously, for all of us, especially now, because a lot of people have experienced some burnout and whatnot. So yeah, I think that the pressure for me, I feel like it's not necessarily an obligation, but it is important for me to continue to communicate that balance is important and self-care is important. And aside from aspiring to do these wonderful things, that cannot be forgotten. And I do that. I try to do that the best I can and communicate that. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it actually leads me kind of to the next question, which I'm gonna bring to you, Lawrence, which is, I wonder when that is the case. You mentioned your brand, Jessica, and for me with Lawrence, I mean, he's somebody who's been a part of so many different movements and so many things that, and I see him as this incredibly energetic. If anyone has anyone been in the room with Lawrence Carter Long when he's in the physical room, it's like literally a powder keg. And so when you started posting during this time about some of the struggles that you were going through, mental health wise, and just in the pandemic, I thought I don't want to say brave, because that almost sounds like, I don't mean it in a patronizing way, but like, I'm going to be really honest with you. And I told you the other day that even for me as an advocate, like if I post a sad song that I like or a poem, people freak out. They're like, Xian, are you okay? Like, you know what I mean? And so I felt like I was telling Lawrence the other day that I almost don't post those things because I'm afraid it's going to be hard on my friends and my loved ones, because, they're like, not you, Xian, you know what I mean? So I that's why I thought, wow, go Lawrence, that you're being so real and so vulnerable. And I think even something that I talk about with corporations is making sure that you're not faking it till you make it as a leader. And you know what I mean? So I think this is something that everybody deals with on some level, but I guess I'm finally getting to the question part, I promise, Lawrence. But my question to you is, what made you decide to be so open? And, if you could share some of your journey with us, that would be amazing, because you are a role model to us. And I think that's going to help a lot of other people to be honest as well.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I think it's so essential. One of the things that came out of the pandemic, whether anybody asked for it or not, it was just sort of a matter of circumstance. Was we all had a heck of a lot of time to pause and reflect and reevaluate. And I was one of those, that was part of my journey too. Most people, when they see me walk into a room, if they have vision, can note that I walk a little differently than most. I have cerebral palsy. I've had cerebral palsy since I was born. And so that's easy to spot. What I don't or haven't talked about quite as much is the relationship that I've had with depression. And my relationship with depression is something that's on this shoulder. I'm tapping my shoulder here. I should do a visual description, I guess. So I'm a middle-aged white man with sort of silverish hair, increasingly silverish hair, very stylish stubble, and a blue kind of wavy, weathered shirt. And I'm sitting in my kitchen with sort of a white, yellowish kind of ivory background. So what you don't see, right, unless somebody points it out in the way that I just did that visual description, is the depression. And so what tends to happen is, in my experience, the depression has gone in waves. I'll have periods of time where it's not sitting on my shoulder, whispering in my ear, and then I'll have other periods of time where it's screaming very loudly. And what I've learned to do through time is to respect that relationship and know that that is a companion that goes with me everywhere. And even on the days when it's silent, that it's going to start whispering again at some point. And when it does, usually that means I'm exhausted. Usually that means that I'm doing too much. Usually that means that I need to step back and take a break from all those various things that I enjoy and that I do work on. Because when the depression takes hold, when it takes over, I'm not as effective as I like to be. I'm not as energetic as you see in public speaking events. I'm not the person that I am when I feel like I'm on and when all the cylinders are firing. And that's something that people hadn't seen. That's something people didn't know about. It's not something that I've been particularly public about. It's been my own personal journey. But I have, through the course of 30 years and doing that dance, tried every different SSRI that anybody can imagine, right? So Prozac, Zoloft, you name it. Basically got nothing but the side effects from those drugs. They haven't worked very well for me. A few years back, though, I started using psychedelic medicine with a guided journey and found that that worked in ways that the conventional methods had not. And part of what had happened in those journeys and in those experiences that I've had with psilocybin and with ketamine is you start to connect the dots within various points and aspects of your life that may have been somewhat disconnected. At least that was my experience. And part of what I found is that in order to be true to myself and true to the world and what I was putting out into the world, I had to be honest about that. I had to be honest with myself and I had to be honest with everybody else. And I realized that if it was going to be of service to the world, if that's my mission, then I've got to open that door a little bit. If I've had those experiences and they have helped me, then I have a responsibility to maybe give that possibility, that opportunity, that flash of insight, that experience to others so that they might explore it as well. And part of that is being honest and genuine about the days that aren't going as well. You know, everybody wants, I think, at the end of the day, our ultimate goal in anything we do is to be 100% fully ourselves. Yeah. And if we're going to be 100% fully ourselves, that includes the good days, that includes the bad days. And I found that when I'm able to integrate those things and be honest about it and open about it, all of it goes much easier. I'm not hiding anything. And part of that hiding is exhausting. Part of that not talking about it increases the fatigue. Part of that sort of not getting into conversation and sharing increases the isolation. So the openness is, yes, a philosophical idea, right? A moral idea, but it's also very, very practical because I find that when I am open about it, when I do talk about it, that makes me feel more like myself, my complete whole self. And that in turn helps other people.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it also gives other people permission. They say, well, if Lawrence is going through this, then I'm not alone. And it gives other people strength and courage. So thank you for bringing up the hiding, because that was really, as we were talking about this in the pre-panel discussions, I think that was really what I was wondering about, is what are we hiding? Especially, I think everybody does, I think non-disabled or disabled, we're taught to kind of hide those things that are not easy. Fake it till you make it, best foot forward. And I really, that's something that is a pet peeve of mine. But I really wanted to hear from this panel, and I would love to start with you, Sugandha, especially you have not only your lived experience of I don't know, I mean, if we want to call it disability, but with albinism. And then you also have the immigrant experience, where there's even more in terms of working towards inclusion. So I wondered if you maybe want to share with us, as an educator, what are some of the things that you've dealt with? And have you felt that you needed to hide anything in the past or present? And what would you like to share about that?
Sure. First of all, I would like to say thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And hello, everyone, and namaste. I'd like to start with my image description as well. I am a white or pale person with pale skin, with blonde hair, and my eyebrows are white, and I have purplish eyes that might look pinkish in extreme yellow light, and I'm wearing black from head to toe with a white print on my shirt. So something that you don't see when you see me is that really I'm brown, and I think you can get a little gist of that when you hear my accent. So I believe that for me, I was born with albinism, which is a very rare genetic condition which affects the skin because the body is unable to produce melanin in the skin, eyes, and hair. And it affects my body in many different ways, one of which is light, because my eyes are not capable of filtering light. And also I have really low vision. So yes, I do like to call myself disabled and identify with the disability community, because that is a very big part of my identity. And I like to quote unquote normalize that, because that is really important, because disabilities are not disabilities. They are, I think, spectacular opportunities. So in terms of just hiding and not hiding, I really appreciate what everybody has shared, because I think a big part of the experience of having disability is making yourself vulnerable, but in a way that is your strength. And that to me has been something that took me decades to understand and realize, is how do I really make myself vulnerable? Because vulnerability is not a bad thing, but we are really raised to think that, oh, but don't say that. Or when you're going to a job, there's this notion that you go through back and forth. What do I share with the employer? What not do I share with the employer? Will I be perceived as less if I shared about my disability? Because disability can only be really enforced when the enforcement is really being overlooked and seeing and made sure that those ideas of ADA are being enforced truly. So yeah, so I think for me, it's an overall experience of just being myself and sharing with the world that being yourself is a big part of your identity, and that can elevate others' experiences too, because when you share your experience, everybody else is able to identify with it and relate to you. And that's a big part of being human, I think.
Yeah, I always say we connect more on weakness than strength, actually. If you say, oh man, I just spent 2 hours in this, well, this is not a good example given what happened in the subway yesterday. But most people will say, oh, that happened to me last week, right? A delay or something. But if you're like, oh, I got here by helicopter, like who can relate to that? Unless it's Jess in her ergo, but anyway, in your ergo coupe. But yeah, so I mean, but that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is, I think that there's so much pressure on everyone, but especially the disability community to kind of, I think when I was growing up, and please talk to this, if this is your experience or not, but I felt that, when I was a kid, the person that was different had to adapt to their environment and be scrappy and flexible and evolve. And I feel that it's really only the last 10 years where it feels like people are saying, oh no, I'm here. You have to welcome me. And, I expect there to be live captioning or a visual description. And by the way, the reason I didn't do that is I'm hearing from some corners that's actually not wanted by my friends with different so I don't know. I will give you my description anyway. I'm wearing red jumpsuit, but this idea, red jumpsuit, I'm half Asian girl, big smile, and I love everybody. But no, and I think that there's this pressure to almost, at least when I was younger, I remember being in school and kids would say to me, but Xian, you're normal, right? They weren't trying to make some big statement about what is normal. They were asking me, it's okay to talk to you, right? It's okay to be your friend. And always my answer was, yeah, because I knew that all we needed to do was kind of get beyond whatever the difference was. But as I've gotten older, I realized it's so important to celebrate in the intersections that we are, everything that we are. And I feel that thankfully this advocacy work has really helped me to embrace capital D disabled. And I thought of you, Lawrence, when she said I own my disability, because Lawrence is always saying, say the word, right? Say the word. So anyway, so I think that hearing this from all of you, and I was also, you talked about work, Sugandha. I would love to do a small follow-up to what you just said. Have you found in the workplace that people are accommodating to what you need in the US versus India? I would love to also know that international perspective a little bit.
Sure. I'd like to start by saying, for me, accommodation is not something that comes naturally to my mind because growing up in India, I did not have any accommodations. In fact, there are still several institutions and organizations that do not understand the concept of accommodations. So for me, it's been a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I never had that true accessible learning experience, and I always had to work really hard to make learning and processes of learning, whether it was in school, whether it was in my undergrad as a design student, or whether it was in any industry where I worked in India. I really had to make my work towards making my own process of learning and also of navigating the world, and also of finding ways of just, I don't want to say fit in, but it really was trying to fit in, so much so that I even had to dye my hair because I was the only one who looked like me in India. So I always stood out of the crowd. And everybody had this notion that, oh, like when you go to the US, everybody was really excited, much more excited than me, to be honest, that, wow, like now you'll just blend in and everything will be great. And I didn't know what to think of that because I really was just coming from my master's. I was more excited about learning textiles than about thinking about whether I blend in or not. And when I came here, I thought much more about my racial, my ethnic, as well as my disability identity, because no one from my country ever identifies with me as an Indian. No one from any country ever looks at me and says, you're Indian. And I don't blame them, but growing up, I was raised as an Indian, and that is a really big part of my identity. I am a Desi Indian girl. There's a song Desi Girl. Anyway, I'm digressing.
You want to sing for us?
No, thank you. I'm only good in shower. So no.
Okay, we're heading over to your house soon.
So I'd like to say that for me, the concept of accommodations does not come naturally. And I don't even expect that. And when I came to grad school, my vision was to not think of learning from the point of view of I'm going to get all these accommodations, because yes, I was offered all those accommodations, but didn't mean anything to me because I always had to kind of push through my own self, and that kind of became my normal experience. And the only thing, or the thing that I struggle most with is my social identity, because when I go to places, I don't see people, and people often misconstrue that as either I'm having attitude or I'm rude, or I don't know what people think, to be honest. But for me, there are challenges that again are not visible. So accommodations for me mean very different, because I need things that I don't think I can always verbalize by physically demanding them. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that I can keep talking about, but I'd like to hear other people's perspectives too. But thank you for this question. I think, like, oh my God, there's so much unpacking here.
I know. I wish we had more time, guys, because this is definitely a meaty thing. This is something that we'll continue to talk about. And I think it's also, we are always, I always say to my students, at NYU and elsewhere, only you can communicate your needs to people. But what if we don't know what our needs are, right? So that's a really interesting point. And I think it can take a lifetime to kind of figure out, what is it that we actually need. But Miranda, based off what Sugandha said, I think this is a great time to ask you a little bit about the article you wrote for The Mighty and learning to ask questions in the workplace. I would love for you to share your experiences at work and how it's evolved.
Yeah, this is Miranda. Absolutely. I feel like I want to preface this by saying, like, I feel like this is a continuous journey for me. Like when I wrote the article and when I continued to have the same struggles that in this article I talked about resolving, there's a part of me that's like there's a part of me that was like, how can I still have these struggles and have published this article. And so I'm still in this process of just accepting, like, well, I'm a human being. I'm going to continue to make these mistakes. But essentially, what I've struggled with and still continue to struggle with is being honest about the questions I want to ask, and also having difficulty with how to frame questions I want to ask. And what I mean by this is that like autism acceptance wasn't a thing when I was growing up. Like I was diagnosed with PDD, NOS, Asperger's, although I identify as autistic as my identity. And I had the accommodations growing up, but I was also told, like, don't tell anyone that you have Asperger's. And that was something that I was told smack when I was going into middle school. And I'm just going to be very explicit. Middle school is hell. I think everyone who's in this education system can agree to that. Oh my gosh, I did not expect that applause. Thank you. Thank you for that validation.
Puberty, man.
No, but yeah, but it's like it's middle school. That's the time when people are starting to like form their personalities, their cliques. And I was still making friend groups and I couldn't tell anyone that I had a disability. And years later, my friends would find out they had disabilities and stuff like that. But like, no one was talking about that at the time. And so I felt, and and then autism was kind of seen, it was seen as different. And I was like, well, who's Miranda and who's like autism?
Mhm.
And so a lot of, so like this mentality I adapted, which unfortunately I still have because internalized ableism is just something that's going to take years and years and years to unweave, is
That's
that
another panel, a whole.
I know there was so much intersection in this discussion, but basically the mindset that I create for myself is that I have to prove that I'm a capable person. And because of that, when I have a question, even if it's about how to like do a very simple task, I get very hesitant about asking. And I've been very fortunate that in the workplaces I've been in, when I've run into these issues, I've eventually opened up and said, like, this is what I need help with. This is what I need as an autistic person, or just like discovering on my own, like, this is what I'm struggling with. Is there something that you can do to assist me? And I've been fortunate that a lot of people I've been working with, including at the JCC, have been super understanding about that. And what I wrote about in the article for the Mighty was just like, like not asking questions because I didn't want to seem less capable. I was worried about consuming time, but it just made me, when I was able to communicate, it made me more efficient in the process. Granted, I think I did kind of fall back into that period of like, I'm struggling with all these basic things. Why? I'm a bad person, just spiral. And it's just very, very recently, we even had a brunch just to celebrate ReelAbilities. It's very recently that I've been able to open up again and just be like, here's all the things that I've noticed about myself and that I'm going through. And I think that not just me, but I think it's so important for people to be honest, both about not just their needs, but also the emotional state that they're in. Because I think that even if we just find small ways to just like check in on each other and I think like boost each other up, I think that makes a more comfortable and I think supportive workplace. And I think and I think that this has been very helpful with the team. I think when everyone knows that they're on the same page, it's like, then you don't need to have that point of comparison anymore. And we can all just kind of just be together as a community, as opposed to it just being like, I feel like alone with these struggles or alone with this work because of like this, trauma I've had to grow up with.
Exactly. And I also think what you're saying relates to everyone, because I find actually, because like I can't go anywhere, like let's say a buffet or something without asking for help. Or so if I don't ask for help at a buffet, I'm not going to eat. So I've become really comfortable. And if there's a staircase and I'm by myself, I have to ask a stranger for help or I'm not getting up that staircase. And so I feel like, having a lifelong disability, I had a lot of practice asking for help. And it was always pretty comfortable with that part of it. But I just realized that that's not necessarily, when I had my grandmother who was really sick, she refused to ask for help in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And as a result, fell on her hip and almost broke it. And I realized that it seems to me like our culture, the whole culture, seems to really struggle with help. We're going to take questions in a moment. Wait, where did everybody go? Oh, no. Okay. Come back. But I was going to ask the rest of the group, is there like a kind of moment where you realized, okay, I need to be honest about this thing that I've been hiding or needing help with? Maybe Sugandha, you can take it first since we lost half the panel.
Sure. So, I think I just wanted to add to what you were saying about how you've become comfortable asking for help. So I think, again, Miranda, thanks for that, because I think for me also, like, it comes so naturally for me when I'm traveling on the subway or anywhere, like, oh, excuse me, can you tell me where this place is? And people, like especially sighted people with me, will be like, oh, no, 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 let's just look at the map. And I'm like, but why? So anyway, I think what I was getting at was disability makes us human. That's my take out of it. I think it's so special and amazing to have this experience. I would not exchange this for full sight, because whatever I am right now is because of my disability and not despite of it. So I just wanted to say that. And in terms of hiding, I think I kind of enjoy this word hiding, because it's like, it has a sort of a funny tone to it, in the sense that in one sense, you think of hiding, and hide and seek comes to my mind, and like how as kids we play that, and as a parallel, as adults also we play that in our real life. So it's interesting. I think we're always playing hiding. And to sum it up, I would say that disability helps us out of that.
Well, I think what you're saying is so fascinating, because when you're hiding as a kid in that context, it's fun, right? But hiding as an adult could feel really, or hiding in any other context could feel really oppressive. So I think that contrast is really interesting. But I mean, when you're playing hide and seek, you're hoping to be found, you're hoping to be seen eventually, right? No, oh, they're back. Perfect timing. Were you guys able to hear the question that I okay, great. I would love to hear from both of you if you had a moment where you're like, okay, unless I get help in this thing, nothing is going to move forward. Was there kind of like a aha moment for either of you? And I'll start with Lawrence.
Yes, and there've been plenty. There've been a succession of them, right? But eventually, I started listening, and I think that's the difference. One of the things that I just occurred to me as I've been listening to these wonderful comments by everybody is that why does this happen? How did we get in this situation? And I think that's important to unpack as well. Disabled folks. So I'm a little older than the other folks on the panel. So I grew up in the 1970s. Dark ages. And what my experience was, and I think this is the kind of thing that people can sort of take on board, right? It can become part of your conditioning or your programming, was that you have to work 2 or 3 times as hard to get half as much credit if you're disabled. And because people don't notice you, they discount you, they don't listen, right? So you kind of have to blow people's socks off or knock the doors down in order to even get them to notice what you're doing. And so what happens, I think very often, and I've seen this with others throughout my life, is you're already kind of tarred with that brush of low expectations. And so if people already think that you can't achieve, then we often adopt the sense that we have to overachieve. And the practical reality is that we have to overachieve just so that non-disabled people will take notice of us. Right? So that can create this kind of vicious cycle where we're constantly running, doing, and we're not taking care of our own needs. And eventually that catches up with us. So you've got this situation where fake it till you make it can sometimes be fake it till you break it. Right? Exactly. And ultimately what happened with me is that I didn't stop to think, I didn't stop to revise, I didn't stop to ask or inquire until things were broken, until they weren't working for me anymore. And it was then that I had to, right? When it became more painful or more difficult to not ask than to ask, then that was something I was motivated to do. But I remember being asked at one point, I do a lot of media work. Somebody was sort of projecting their own stuff about disability onto me. And they said, well, wouldn't you want to be normal? And my response to them was, what on earth benefit could there be to anybody on the planet if I lowered my expectations? right?
Oh. Woohoo!
Right?
Mic
Because
drop.
I do want to achieve. I do want to excel. I do want the things that I am active and engaged and working on to be brilliant. I don't think any of us should, put a light over that, a covering over that and knock it down. But what I do want is that I want to be understood.
Right.
And I think that that's a difference, and that's an important difference. I don't have to be just like you to be understood. I don't have to be just like everybody else to be understood. And it's up to me to communicate my needs and my goals and my wishes so that people can understand me. We don't have to be exactly the same, but what we have to do is respect each other and communicate those needs.
Before we call on Jess, I just wanted to comment, because I say this all the time in my Give You Witty Wings program with my students. I say, anytime I hear somebody say, I just want to be like everybody else, I know that they're lying, because nobody actually wants to be like anyone else. What they're really saying is, I want to be loved, seen, and accepted exactly as I am. And you just really hit that on the head. So I just had to say, wow. Thank you so much, Lawrence. And I think that's a perfect segue to Jess, because she is every woman. And I do wonder about the pressures of that behind the scenes. So Jess.
Yeah, I think Lawrence and Sean, you did wonderful with that as well. And when Lawrence mentioned about the importance of communication, I'm going to touch on help in a kind of different light. And I'm thinking about overhelp and how to say no to that. Because for the longest time, when you see, obviously, that I don't have both arms, there's this immediate connection that people make, and they think, oh, she must need help. And so my whole life has been almost in that kind of light of people saying, oh, you don't have arms, you must need the help. And to the point that I was essentially forced, not out of my own choice, but forced to wear prosthetics. And I have nothing against prosthetics. Obviously, everyone, they are good for many people who choose to wear them. But for me, I felt as though I was wearing them with this pressure of conformity and the need that people had to want to help me. And I had to decide after 11 years to finally be honest about it and say, this is not for me. And as much as I appreciate the effort and what you're intending to do, it actually is a disservice to me. And being honest with the world in that sense was one of my greatest turning points in life, was recognizing that, it's my job to be the best version of myself. I might not be able to convince the entire world, but all I can do is be the best version of myself. And that's the most important thing.
And that's what we love about you, Jess, that you're so authentic for the world to see. No, that's a really good point about overhelp. And it actually, as Lawrence was talking, I was thinking also about the other side of it, where he's saying that we need to be 3 times better. I also think there's another part of it is like where you're doing basic things and people are like, great job, you tied your shoes. Wow, you're really smart. And where there's like also lower expectation because, just being able to do the basics makes you somehow extraordinary. So I've struggled with that too. Why should I be held to any other standard than anyone else? And it's actually, my mom is the only person on a New York City street that will tell me to hurry up, but I kind of love it because I'm like, because she's not holding me to a different standard than for herself. So you could call that ableism, or you could call that just being a Chinese mom. So I want to hear from the audience, and we're going to ask questions, but I wanted to ask one, and maybe we could keep this to 1 or 2 sentences, but what can be done? What would you like to see in the future in terms of work culture, or in terms of, on this topic of productivity and perfectionism and ableism and being disabled? What would you like to see different, in terms of that overhelp, maybe, Jess, or in the future, what would you like to see in terms of our full integration together for all of our differences as human beings? What do you think we could do differently, and what are your hopes? I know that's kind of a huge question, but you know, we do things big over here. So. You know what? Maybe I'll actually start with Miranda.
Oh boy, I think I had some ideas, but I wanted to have, is it okay if I have some time to just let the
We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. But I just know that we had already heard so much from, so Sugandha, tell us, what would you like to see different? I know it's a really big question.
I think the first thing I would like to see different is, which is starting to happen a little bit, is representation, like bringing disabled people, disabled talents, and even the diversity within the disability community, which is often underseen and under hunted, I would say, if I could use that word.
Hunted.
I mean, in India, there's a word called headhunters. So I have still a lot of Indian vocabulary. So forgive me if it sounds aggressive.
No. Well, we're New Yorkers. We're pretty aggressive too. But no, feel free to, you know, if you want to define that for us or take us on your journey.
Well, I'll keep it brief.
Sure.
So headhunters are people who are organizations like Indeed or who
headhunters,
try to find talents. So I would like to see more people with disabilities in every arena, because I know there are a lot of disabled talents that are not being seen and heard. We need to hear every voice. We need to hear every experience, and also just carry forward this idea of having open conversation, open forums, because I think when socially the gap between the disabled people and the mainstream society is bridged, we'll see a change in the society, because disability automatically bridges so many other gaps and brings so much humility and compassion and just humanness and humaneness to the society.
Yes. Not to mention that disability covers every form of difference. In the Venn diagram of differences, disability touches every community. So that's a great point. Yes, Miranda.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that Sugandha spoke first, because I think that what I'd like to see more of, I think in the workforce, and I think just in a general sphere, is I think that I want to see like not only just like more communication, but also more understanding, because I think that, like, for instance, something that I've been thinking about recently is that sometimes if a non-disabled person tells me like we all go through the same thing, there's a part of me that thinks to myself like I understand that, but there's also my experience, and there's my way of thinking and there's my way of being, versus I feel like when there's a disabled person who says like, you know, we all go through the same thing, I think it's this understanding of like, well, everyone as a collective with their own individuality is having the same experience, like, because we all are unique, and like that uniqueness, that individuality becomes a collective, which hopefully that sentence makes sense. But I think that there needs to be that understanding, because I think that to be able to help the disability community, you also need to be able to understand the disability community. And I think that's something that I'm very fortunate about, is that the people who I work with are also very understanding of me as well, like as Miranda, as a person, as an autistic person. And I think that there needs to be more of that just in general.
Right. And I think your point is really important, because a lot of times in trying to, you know, connect with us, people can be like, oh, well, I don't even see I don't even see your ski poles. I don't even see your autism. I don't even see albinism, fill in the blank. Right. And they think that is a compliment. But I think, yes, finding a way to celebrate our differences and realize that we want the same things, maybe, but we're not having the exact same experience, and that's where we can learn. So powerful, powerful stuff. So Jess, what would you like to see different?
Just to add to that, I definitely would love to see people keeping an open mind and being open to possibilities, as opposed to seeing the negativity or whatever's lacking. And also an emphasis on the importance of universal design, because I think that if we can keep that going and continue to make strides in that, it will overcome these barriers that we have, and we're able to create a community of inclusion.
Wow, beautifully said. Mic drop. No, because I don't think universal we often will talk about conditions without talking about when we're able to make the physical world more accessible, a lot of those limitations that we supposedly have disappear. So that's not, I just want to underscore what you're saying there, because it's you said it very succinctly, much more than me, but I think it's incredibly important that we think about that. How do we make sure the environment meets the people in it? Lawrence?
Yeah, I would like just a genuine, real evaluation and reflection on these issues. You know, universal design does not mean universal experience. It doesn't mean that we've gotten rid of discrimination. It doesn't mean that we've gotten rid of ableism. It just means we've made the process easier for people in some ways to kind of use. And so the way I think about it is this, and this is sort of mirrors my own awakening, if you will. If the process for being, let's say, disillusioned means that we've woken up from illusion, that we've been liberated from that illusion, right? That what that says to me is that being disillusioned is not a negative. It means that we've woken up. It means that we're facing reality. Those same possibilities exist with disability if we let it. If we talk about it, if we embrace being disabled, that means that we've liberated ourselves from these very narrow notions of what ability is or of what ability can be. And so disability for me is about embracing that. It's about expanding those opportunities. And it's about understanding that life is too short for somebody else's shame. So I don't have to pick that up and carry it around. That's somebody else's baggage. So we, as disabled people and people working in disability community, have a golden opportunity to reevaluate and to break the rules and to make new ways of being. And I'd love to see every one of us take advantage of that and build a world that's better for all of us.
Yeah, I love, wow. Woo! No, I think that's incredibly important, because what you're really saying, and this is what I say all the time when people say, aren't you tired? As an advocate, aren't you tired? And I actually say, no, because I'm like the disillusionment that when you start to realize how many barriers still exist, that gives me motivation. It gives me something to work towards in terms of a solution. So that's incredibly important, Lawrence. And I know I promised you guys time for questions. So I want to jump right into it. But boy, oh boy, this is why we need like 2 hours next time for sure. But I love you guys. And I hope, and I want to also give a shout out to Miss Kira Allen, who came all this way to see us. She is the star of, well, many upcoming projects, but also you may have seen her in a show. Well, it's not a show, it's a movie called Run. I told her after I saw it, you're going to win an Oscar one day. It's only a matter of time. So I just wanted to shout her out. And also our beloved friend, Rick Budati of Positive Exposure, who risked exposure to be with us. So thank you so much. Questions, comments? We're going to have a party now.
We have one question from the virtual space.
Okay.
Hi, this is Yara here.
Hi.
I just wanted to share, we also have 34 participants in the virtual space, so we have a whole room here. So this is a question from Catherine. How do you get your friends and colleagues to understand that you are different and need accommodations? Most of the time, when I bring up that I need something very particular to be successful, I'm given unsolicited solutions and suggestions, and then the conversation digresses into just try this one thing first instead of I hear you and let me try to get you what you need.
Great question. Anyone want to jump in with that?
Yeah, I would just say what I've learned to do, and again, I think this comes with age and experience, is that I say, oh, I don't need advice. I just need you to listen. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, while we're waiting for them to come back, you're back. Wow, I love that. We just snapped our fingers and you were back.
That was like a
Amazing.
virtual mic drop too, just like an
I
unintentional virtual
know.
mic drop.
The internet could not handle the realness of that answer. Amazing. No, and yeah, if anyone else have comments, because I also would like to say something, but I want to make sure panelists get to say. Jess, do you have any advice?
No, I think it was well said, and excited to hear what you have to say, Xian.
Well, I also think that is usually, I've learned a lot about what allyship really is during the pandemic. I think a lot of people can come from a place of altruistic intentions, but not realize that actual allyship is listening and asking questions and then acting, not necessarily. I think people tend to impose things based off what they think they could do or how they would react, rather than really listening to what does this person in front of me need, which could be very different. Okay, yes, yeah.
It takes me a second to open this mic, sorry. I would like to say that sometimes in work-related situations, it can be difficult to ask for accommodations. Coming from a personal experience, work environments are difficult to navigate, particularly when you're dealing with intimidating administrators. I would say that also go to a person, if you're talking about your workplace accommodations, go to a person that you can really talk to in your workplace in confidence, and with the confidence that they would understand and listen, and then try to figure out a solution to navigate that situation. Because sometimes directly confronting someone may not give you good solutions, and sometimes it is important to also have support within the workplace and know who you can count on for that support, and that can come in really handy. And this is coming from my personal experience.
Really great point. Other questions? Do you have
We have a question, front row.
Hi, everybody. I don't so much have a question as I just wanted to say, I'm just so grateful that I'm here right now to listen to you guys. Like, this is so, you guys are amazing. And I'm just so appreciative. I've been injured for almost 10 years now. And I am just in the last few years starting to really feel this deeper love and acceptance for myself and appreciation for who I am as a woman with a disability. And that's an unbelievable feeling. And sitting in this space, sharing space with all of you with your own experiences is really illuminating and really helpful. And I'm just in awe of all of you and just really completely just full of gratitude right now. So thank you.
We're just so grateful to have you, and thank you for sharing that. And it's been a process for each one of us here. I'm going to speak for the panel. I think that is just the nature of being different, is that we all have to adjust and figure out who we are. And so we're here to support you, Kelsey. And I just want to thank you so much for being here. We're so honored. Before I cry, I think we're going to go to the next question.
We have a question here.
Sorry guys, I'm Arnold. I'm an actor as well. Like I feel like as a group discussion, because I wasn't 10 on the first show, but I was like, I feel so timid because even came late or subway. Even in subway, I guess I'm a born Pisces, so I love to be community. And fuck the subway, I hate none of my brain. So my question is that as a person with a disability and an actor and the workplace, so if I had to change this life, I'm satisfied with it since I attend CUNY. So like I want to make everyone welcome, even like disability as crew, and like I'm in a different environment that those work 9 to 5. So like if I make productive better, because I'm in this program called Focus Mate where you do life as a disability, clean stuff, and like how to manage your household better, or where you are to be cleaner, and accountability is for sure to moving forward even after pandemic. Yeah, this help is very helpful. I feel more intimate right now. I know we're pressed in time, but I wish it could be 2 hours or 2.5 because it's very big position. Because everyone's going in person right now slowly. Now it's New York. This is New York, man.
You guys definitely made it worthwhile coming out of my under my rock. I'm so happy to be here and with everyone. Thank you, Arnold, for sharing. And any other questions or comments? I also want to shout out Cynthia and Pete, who are, well, Pete is on the ReelAbilities selection committee with us, and Cynthia's been here for everything this entire. Oh, you are on the other. I'm so sorry. There's 2 committees, and oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I should visit. I should visit the other committee. All right. Anyway, other questions?
Any other questions? We have one up here.
Hi guys. I know we've been talking a lot about work and stress with regards to disability, but I want to take a second and ask you guys what your favorite way to decompress and self-care is.
Oh, that's a great question. Jess, you want to take that?
I love to cycle, and cycling in the outdoors. It's just, in Arizona, we actually have the nice months during the winter. So right now we're going to be transitioning into our incredibly hot spring, summer / fall. And so I'm not looking forward to that. So I have to find ways to accommodate the extreme heat here by going swimming and then cycling in the cooler months. So I find exercise to be a wonderful way to decompress because of the endorphins and the community as well. If you can find a community of other athletes with disabilities, that's what I found most recently to be a wonderful way of encouragement. Great question. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, that's wonderful. You can see me holding up here a visual description, my pair of binoculars. It's cold and blustery today here in California, but I've enjoyed during this pandemic working from my back deck about 90% of the time. And while I've been doing that, I'm privy to seeing all these different trees and watching the avian politics going on. The wrens versus the crows versus it's fascinating. It's like an HBO miniseries. And so I've really gotten fascinated by the politics of the birds that I inhabit this world with just outside my back door. And I've started looking at them a little more closely.
Amazing. Thanks for bringing props with you for that answer.
They're always close by.
I'd like to share my weird decompression method as well. I'm sure this is going to come across pretty weird to people, but I don't care.
We like weird. Go.
So
It's
I
good.
like to listen to crazy Bollywood music on the subway. That's my decompression method, because as I listen to the crazy Bollywood music, I see all kinds of species of humans come alive.
I love it. I love it. Miranda?
Yeah, this is Miranda. That's actually still something I'm trying to figure out for myself, because I find that when I'm doing self-care that's passive, my brain's like, but what if we do this? And what if we do this? And then when I'm doing self-care that's active, my brain's like, hey, let's think about this trauma instead. You want to think about this trauma? You want to just go in a circle in this trauma? That's where we are now. So I'm still trying to practice and discover for myself, like, well, what are my best, like what is self-care that is genuinely helpful for me? And I think that's something that I do find is very cathartic for me is growing up in theater. I love singing, I love acting. And I think that there's a period of time where I just felt exhausted singing, which is strange for me because it's such a unique and powerful form of expression. And it's only very recently that I was like, yeah, I should sing more. And I also had an exercise trainer who, you know, like recommended that I can try humming. So now there's a part of me that's like, maybe when I'm stressed, I'll just like hum a song or something like that. And just like, cause I think that I think this is just part of like my neurological build, but I think that for me, verbal expression helps to release a lot of like inside tension. So I think that what I want to experiment with as a form of self-care is like, how can I use that verbal ability to find a way to calm myself? And also like, and when I do have like the downtime where I don't have that racing mindset, I just also like to watch shows. I like to play video games. I think hanging out with friends is great. I plan on like forming like a small writing group of some friends. And I think that will be great because like writing is something else that I also greatly care about. But yeah, unfortunately I don't have like concrete answers because it's still a journey for me, but yeah, I think that creative expression is something that I want to be able to tap into again as a form of self-care.
Amazing. That's real. And this is a process for everyone. I hope everyone's asking themselves, yeah, what do I do for self-care? So thank you guys. Is there any others? I think we might be way over time already.
We could continue this forever if we could, but we do have our closing night coming up right after this.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better way to end this festival, this day. This was amazing. Jessica, Lawrence, Sugandha, Miranda, and Xian for organizing all of this. Thank you so much for sharing this conversation with us. It was absolutely amazing.
And since this is ReelAbilities, I did want to plug Jess's film Right Footed, which is what made me obsessed with her. And Lawrence is in like every other film in this festival. So you're going to have to just watch everything to see him. But anyway, thank you guys for being here virtually and in person. And I'm not going to sleep tonight, just so you know. I adore everyone here, and to be continued next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We would like to invite all of you to join us for closing night. Even if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, we still have room left. You can join us as our guests. We actually have closing night drinks and some opportunities for taking some photos in the lobby. And after that, we're going to have our screening of Imperfect at 7 p.m., beginning with our opening night remarks and spotlight award to Lauren Ridloff, who we had the honor to have with us during the summit and is coming back. If you haven't seen her in person or on screen, this is your opportunity. She is absolutely a remarkable person. So please join us upstairs in the lobby and at 7 o'clock here for closing night screening if you are able to. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Yay. Bravo, everyone.